us.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody joining us. This is the Real Estate Shop Talk with the three amigos. I'm the co-founder of Nile, Tim. I'm here with our founder, Khalid Yatim, who's built our technology, and Kirk Hawkins, the head of growth over here. And yeah, it's middle of May 2022. There's a lot of news about, possibly a slowing market, a lot of news about a possible recession. And I just wanted to talk with these guys about what they're seeing in the market, what our data is showing from the sales of the homes that we have. And yeah, what Kirk's seeing out in the market with potential buyers and sellers. So I'll let Kirk take it away.
Tim, you outstanding host duties. And we should point out that the reason you say three amigos is way back when it was just the three of us, almost a year ago.
That's
and it's
right.
How where the market was back then. Anyone looking to buy a home, if you were looking to buy a home in the summer of 2021, you'd have to be prepared, to face off against 10 to 15 other buyers. The price would go significantly above asking. And, you'd have to be ready to release, if not all contingencies, everything except, inspection. So you'd have to be ready for the property to do a no appraisal or a no loan contingency. And so it's been kind of a wild environment. And for the longest time, we wondered if that would ever come to an end. And then you cut to, the last 3 to 6 months as the Fed has been, and we've been seeing the concerns associated with inflation and consumer confidence. And so the environment is starting to change. And I see, at least like on the ground, from various offer scenarios, rather than there being 10 to 15 offers that we're competing with, it's maybe like 5 to 7 or 7 to 10. So there's still demand despite these higher interest rates. But at the same point, the crazy environment is continuing. And I wonder if the environment's going to continue at least through the spring and summer selling season. And if maybe that's one kind of artificial reason why the market has been so hot, is just because this is, despite Southern California having year-round, endless summer type conditions, we do have the spring and summer season when things really pick up. And I wonder if, after that time comes to an end, roughly around Labor Day, if we'll get back into the rotation where things will really slow down. But I, in talking to lenders, in talking to other experts, listening to what, some of the scholars and others, on a higher level say on CNBC, it seems like we're not necessarily going into a 2008, 2007 crash type environment, but it just remains to be seen like how much longer this is going to continue. And I think, a lot of clients are kind of sitting on the sidelines wondering if this is going to, if the market is about to peak. They don't want to buy at the top of the market, but there's all these different strategies that we can think of how to kind of guide our clients in the right way too.
Oh, that's interesting. What do you think on guiding the clients? I would imagine a lot of speculative buyers are out, but people always need a home, right?
Yeah, no. And I think that's the biggest thing that, at least what some of these experts say, even what some of the lenders have said, is, you might be having a baby, there might be a retirement, there could be, and unfortunately even maybe a death in the family. And so all of these major life milestones are still happening. And, even if you're moving from a rental to a house because you're getting married or having a baby, you still are going to have to purchase. And so, and you're going to have to, you need to kind of move up in that, in kind of like the home buying food chain in a way. And I still think, over 5 to 10 years, you're still going to get appreciation regardless of when you purchase and regardless of how high the price is. So not that I'd want to spend anyone's extra money, but I think if you have to buy and you need more space, then eventually the pricing will work out because you can always refinance potentially. And I know Khalid and I talk about this frequently, like, what does this mean? Where is this going? And that's kind of what we say a lot of times too, is that if you do need to buy, then still go ahead and purchase, but be sensible about it, I guess.
Yeah, I always think, I feel like there's like a three-way tug of war going on where it's like there's the people that have the fear of missing out, right? It's like they've been wanting to buy a home for a long time. They still want to buy a home. Real estate is decade over decade, over the long haul, considerably appreciates in value. So you've got the folks that have the fear of missing out. Then you've got some of the folks that have the fear of losing out, right? They have the fear of like, okay, I don't want to buy at the top. I don't want to catch a falling knife. So, I'm going to hang out on the sidelines, whether it's interest rates or, whatever the case may be. But then I think that third dimension of that is just, where are you going to go? And I think that's what I feel like of all of the factors, that's one of the biggest ones, because I feel like in cycles past, you don't see real estate supply being in such a degree of shortage. Where there's a red hot real estate market, usually the inverse, there's good supply on the rental side. Well, now it just seems like there's no place to live. So, right. If you don't choose to buy, what exactly is your alternative? Because, rental prices are skyrocketing on par with, rising real estate values, which is a pretty significant departure from the norm over the last 30 to 40 years. Usually there's an inverse between the two, but not this go around. So I think it's an interesting thing. Kirk, you had said, you had asked about, or you were talking about like kind of the buyer temperature and like the number of offers and just the overall, I feel like if you kind of look at the data, which isn't, necessarily absolute in terms of its accuracy, but I feel like if you look at the data, from homes on our platform, you see demand and prices probably peaking by either like December of last year or all the way through perhaps like February of this year. But do you see buyers, when do you think that the market, quote unquote, peaked? Not necessarily it's going to crash, but when do you think the top has been called, or do you think we're still going to move that number up?
I don't know. I feel like at the national level, there was one of the executives from Blackstone was speaking earlier today on CNBC, and he thinks that prices might soften a little bit, but that there's not going to be some, massive drop basically. And so I think that's maybe more likely what's going to happen here. I think if anything, they might soften a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know exactly when. I think that's the biggest question that a lot of people have, is trying to forecast, we're getting close and we may be in this 2007 kind of point, but when will that specifically be? And I don't really know.
Yeah, so no, I agree.
I was just going to ask, how would you advise sellers right now, right? If you're talking to a seller, what are you doing to set their expectations?
Well, I think anyone that's even remotely interested in selling, the time to sell is yesterday. So I think it's still a really good environment to sell. But I think an important consideration is, once you sell, what are you going to do? Are you going to buy? Because then if you buy, you're back in the same, situation where you're competing against all of these buyers. Or are you going to rent? And then, rental inventories are really low. Rental prices are significantly higher. I mean, in Los Angeles, some of the luxury apartments have one bedrooms that are in the $3,000 range. And so we're in this like very kind of odd situation where while you might get these amazing proceeds, you have to be strategic about what the next step is going to be too. And then there's the whole thing too, in order to, there's like these lease backs that are happening. And then there's, if the lease back isn't really a thing, you need to rent somewhere. And so there's all of these different things that you have to think about if you are interested in selling.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree. I don't think there's any, there's not going to be some prehistoric crash of the real estate market the way that, kind of the 2008 cycle transpired. And I think for a couple of reasons. One is, borrowers aren't over leveraged the way that they were in, 2008. Like that it was a structural pillar that completely crumbled that, I think everybody has seemed to learn a good lesson from. And so I feel like this time is going to be, if anything, just a nice rebalancing, just like a healthy kind of rebalancing of things more than any type of crash. And, there's not necessarily any reason, there's no cracks in the market, right? Like, I mean, you have a shortage of housing, you have, the majority of homes in America have, plenty of equity in them. So if you did have to liquidate, those properties, like there should be ample liquidity, which actually would help the market quite a bit. So I agree. I think it's just a matter of like, how do you start driving what is the movement for more inventory? I don't know how to solve the inventory crisis. I don't feel like it's just a matter of like, I hear so much like, people are like, oh, home builders need to build more houses. But I feel like we've got to find a way to get sellers on the move again.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think at least that's one great thing about Nile is one of your goals from the very beginning with all of this was that if you make the process easier, that will at least remove some of the friction that people have to deal with. And so ultimately that could help impact the inventory flow, on a macro level with all of this. But so at least that's like what's cool is that's one solution.
Yeah, I definitely think like finding ease in the process will help move that along. I wonder too, like, do you think like, is that enough though? Like take the friction out. Like what else do you think, like from what you're hearing from like sellers in the market, like what else is it going to take to like drive, like to incentivize people to move?
Well, part of the problem too is everyone's refinanced at these record low rates. And so like what's the motivation really? There's not it's difficult if they're, they've refinanced at like 2.75 and they're paying this insanely low monthly mortgage payment. You talk with them, you're just talking like basic numbers of what it's going to look like. And that's a difficult argument to make.
Wow, that's really interesting. I think it's almost like an unforeseen consequence of it's almost like if purchase money loans were, you could like basically split the two rates and you say, okay, we're gonna lower interest rates, but we're only gonna lower interest rates for purchase money, or we're gonna lower, the amount of that change would be significant at the purchase money level, so you could incentivize those people to move, versus exactly what you're doing. If you're refinancing at a record low rate for 15 years, then you basically are planting somebody in their place for 15 years.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. I wonder what the solution for that is in the near term. Probably not a lot.
But I mean, it's also interesting too, because you have these big demographics, millennials that are all trying, are having children or getting married, that are trying to get into properties. And then you have baby boomers that are kind of sticking in their homes a little bit longer. But as baby boomers age and and maybe they evolve more to retirement communities or, like smaller retirement, I guess I don't want to say like convalescent homes, but I guess that's an inevitable.
Just downsizing.
Yeah. A lot of them are downsizing. I would think like on a society-wide basis that happens. And so maybe that's like something to look for, but it's interesting because we really haven't even seen the impact of that. I haven't seen that happen just yet too.
Right.
And then
sounds like what Elon Musk was saying today about everybody going to be being in adult diapers if we don't have higher birth rates. It's like everybody's going to be in convalescent homes if we can't fix long-term interest rates.
That's an interesting argument. So like he's saying that, I mean, does it have something to do with the birth rate too? Is that what?
Yeah, I didn't hear that. What was he saying?
All I saw was a headline. He said, if we don't start increasing birth rates either in America or across the globe, then we're going to just have a bunch of people in adult diapers, which I didn't dig into the why, but I was like, okay. You have my attention.
No, seriously.
Just work wise. Just everybody's going to have to just keep working because there's no.
I guess so. Oh yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah. Well, at least they'll have a house to live in.
Yeah. So, and I think that's one of the, interest rates were already low. A lot of people refied before they were, record lows. But yeah, it's just really the alternative. Where are you going to go? You have a decent mortgage. Even if you're on a fixed income, it's decent. You lived in this house. What is the catalyst to move? That's probably why there's not a lot of inventory now. Yeah, even if you sell, you have cash, but what are you going to do? And so like a lot of people.
Oh, I was going to say, Tim, too, like on that point, like you've got like a lot of that great migration probably has happened, right? Like there's not another COVID that's like triggering that.
Right.
That mass, like, the Boise's and the Dallases and, all these like new markets that have emerged. It's like, where are you going to go? What's the reason to go? Like, what's the reason to go somewhere? We have to like almost create a new momentum to like get people on the move.
No, I was just going to say that a lot of people relocated because of COVID, right? They could work from home, so they went and found places cheaper to work. Other people, that were making good money, in the middle of America, moved to the coast because all of a sudden they could work remote and they wanted to be by the beach. So yeah, I live out in Manhattan Beach, and there's a ton of new people from New York out there, and they, and they don't look like they're going back to New York. Right. So what is this catalyst that's going to happen? There's obviously all the catalysts, some jobs are going to start calling people back in. A lot of jobs aren't, a lot of people are going to stay remote. Does that, get people still moving around, or how does that really get people moving around? Or do you guys see anything in the short-term rental market? Is there going to be a remote economy and people aren't going to really want to own things, but just stay in them for, months at a time in different locations?
What's interesting is, at least in terms of like the like residential real estate in some of these areas, you have young professionals that are relocating from cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, New York, and they're going to like Nashville, Austin, but the Nashville and Austin cities are now now the prices in those areas are becoming less affordable. So now there's these like secondary markets like Boise, Spokane, Washington. I'm trying to think of a few. There's a few
My
other.
my cousin just moved out to Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah. So like Knoxville.
And it's beautiful.
Totally.
They're
It's
growing.
beautiful, but it's amazing that like the kind of like second tier markets are now becoming unaffordable. And now they're going like in Nashville, you used to think like, oh, 600,000 or 700,000, I could get a really nice, essentially like a huge property, really amazing. Same thing with Austin, where now you need like at least $1 million. So people are then going down to like more of these middle-sized regional type hub cities, and they're still paying like 400,000 or 500,000 for something that is significant, compared to Los Angeles real estate. You get so much bang for your buck, but like they're having to kind of, in order to still get those type of opportunities, they have to go to these like smaller and smaller regional areas. And so, but there's so many people that are now have the ability to work from home and be, telecommuting, that like that's providing the opportunity. But I just thought it was so interesting that, for the longest time, everyone was like Nashville and, all these like sub markets in Texas, but now though they're getting priced out of those too.
Right. A lot of investors went out there.
Yeah.
Jacked up those prices a lot. So just to wrap things up, I think we've been going for a little bit now. So Kirk thinks that we're just going to continue the pace. Things are probably going to slow down a bit until, would you say the end of Memorial Day? What's that? Labor Day.
Early September. It's interesting because my birthday is in late September, and I always have noticed that the market, like for the duration of my like 6-year real estate career, the market always slows down like the week before my birthday. So I'm kind of
time it that way.
I kind of like it. It's nice. But then in 2020 and 2021, there was no break. It just continued. Like literally 2021 in particular, the only breaks I got were like Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day. I was busy running around for real estate, even on like Christmas Eve of last year. And so it'll be interesting to see if that kind of frenetic energy kind of continues. And so
I remember Christmas, we were talking about that, and that we were like, oh, it's maybe it's quieting down. And then all of a sudden we talked, and it was like gangbusters.
Yeah, no, totally. It like came, there was literally like no break. It was so crazy.
You know what? I think that all like that just like almost proves like, everybody thought like the real estate market was going to go bust in COVID. It did like 100% the opposite, right? It's like, does anybody really know? Like, does anybody really know? Like, you have tea leaves, you have data, we look at interesting things. You've got, smart people from Blackstone that have their own things. But at the end of the day, like, we're all just making educated guesses and we'll see we'll see where things kind of turn out. They usually turn out right. It's just, you got to hang out long enough to figure out what the story looks like.
Yeah.
So we're just going to track the data, and that's, we'll see how many offers come in on properties and what kind of contingencies, because like Kirk was saying, there was, during the last year and a half, 2 years, it's just been, as much cash as possible, no contingencies. And so we'll see if that holds. I think that will give a bit. Prices might, there's not going to be the crazy over asking, but, houses are still going to move. People are still going to want to move around. Yes.
That's a great idea, Tim. We should run the data on contingencies, because I feel like that would be like, to your point, like you're going to see like some price deltas, of course, but it would be interesting to see like how many contingency triggers change, because that's a more easy thing to play with. Price is a little harder.
Right.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. The contingencies on,
the Nile Contingency Index.
The NCI.
We're the only one that has it. The only one. We're the only one.
We'll be reporting on the NCI.
It's funny because that's how it happens sometimes.
Yeah,
it just becomes like a household name.
You
I
just
love
come up
that.
with, yeah, you just kind of like slap it on and then people go with it.
Yeah. And then
Well, there
you
we
start
go.
hearing
Now-
it in the market. They're like, oh, did you guys
Well,
hear about the
next week
NCI?
we will we'll start talking about the Nile contingency update. What is it?
Now contingency index.
Yeah.
The Nile contingency index. Stay tuned for next week, and we will have some data on contingencies for you. So thank you guys, and we will talk next week.
Sounds good.
Always
Adios,
fun, guys.
amigos.
Adios,
Adios,
amigos.
amigos.